Hello, this is The Moonstone by Wilkie Collins. I'm so excited to talk to you about this book. It was originally serialised in Charles Dickens' magazine, but came out in full book form in 1868. Right, so it's about this diamond. I'm just too excited. The book begins in 1799 at the storming of Seringapatam. This is when the East India Trading Company they're just taking over more parts of India pretty much. And there is this incredible diamond called the Moonstone because it's said to look different at different stages of the moon's waxing and waning, which is part of a Hindu shrine. And one of these English soldiers kills 3 people and steals the diamond. This man, John Herncastle, became an outcast in his family, but he bequeathed the stone upon his death to his niece, Rachel Verinder. Rachel's cousin, Franklin Blake, is tasked with giving her the Moonstone on her 18th birthday. They throw this lovely dinner, he gives her the stone, she wears it as a brooch on her dress, and 12 hours later, the stone is missing. It's been known that the Indians will stop at nothing to recover this precious gem of theirs, and there are 3 Indians lurking near the party at the time. It's first thought they stole it somehow, but then by Sergeant Cuff, it is discovered that it has definitely been taken by somebody within the household. And thus begins 600 pages of whodunit mystery. I fucking loved this book. I thought it was so much fun. It was like half a Victorian romance novel and half Sherlock Holmes. It took you on loads of twists and turns, a couple of dead ends. It was just great. It's thought of as the first full-length detective novel, and while it is a mystery, it is also a romance. And I don't tend to like old romances. I think Jane Austen ruined them for me. But this was just great. I fucking loved it. And I will tell you why that probably was. When it comes to classics that are quite long, that I know I'll probably enjoy, but I have maybe a hard time getting into, what I've done a couple times in the past is that I will listen to the audiobook whilst reading the book. The main problem with audiobooks is that it's kind of at their pace and you can't kind of pause and look back, and if you kind of dull out for a second, you just miss bits. But the benefit of reading along at the same time is that you can pause and look back. You just are more involved and more kind of mentally in the reading experience, but it does also keep you going at a good pace, and I found that worked phenomenally well for this. I think if I just read it as a book, I wouldn't be bored because it was so great, but it definitely helped having the audiobook alongside it. So if you ever feel like that about any chunkier old classics you've been meaning to get to, I'd super recommend also listening to the audiobook. There's a link to the Audible free trial below. The audiobook for this was especially great because it has 7-ish narrators in the book, and each of them had a different voice in the audiobook, and they were all really good. So the first third of the book is narrated by Gabriel Betteridge, who is steward in the house that all of this stuff has happened in. You can imagine he's like Mr. Bates in Downton Abbey. So he's part of the servants, but he's a well-respected old member of the family. He was so genial and such a lovely perspective to read from that it was in such deep contrast to the second narrator, who you just want to strangle. It is a woman called Mrs. Clack, who is the most pious person you ever want to punch in the face. She's the kind of woman that has pamphlets on everything in Christianity and leaves them around people's houses so that they might accidentally be converted to Christ. What a bitch, and it is characterized really well in the writing style. The premise of having the multiple narrators is set forth at the start, which is Franklin Blake, who is the cousin of Rachel Verinder, who gets given the diamond. It kind of starts out by him being I've been chatting to the lawyer, and he was like, it would be a good idea for us to chat about all that stuff that went down with the Moonstone 2 years ago. I'm gonna write to some people that were involved, and they can write about their part of the story, the bit that they were most involved in from their personal experience. So you start out with Betteridge to set the entire context of losing the diamond and a lot of the kind of investigation that happens afterwards. And then it goes to Miss Clack, who is Rachel's cousin, who she sees a lot of kind of after the main kind of events, and then it goes to the solicitor, Mr. Bruff, and then it goes to Franklin Blake, and then it goes to a guy that I don't want to describe because it might ruin it, and then it goes to the original sergeant who did a lot of the initial discoveries, and then it goes back to Franklin Blake, and then it goes to another guy, and then it rounds off with back to Mr. Betteridge, the steward, and then after that there is an epilogue. I found the format of having multiple narrators really effective because it made a lot of sense in the context of like them relating their personal experience of the thing, but it also was so much fun because you get these bits at the start and at the end where it's like, oh, this person already told you about this stuff, or oh, I'm not about to tell you about what happens then with this person, and it's a great excuse for foreshadowing as well. I kind of feel like when characters reference something that's going to happen in the future, it's cheating because we can't experience that in our linear narrative of life. So obviously it's a gift that has to be used really sparingly and for really good effect. The first example for this is only a couple chapters in, by Betteridge, and he says, "Read on, good friend, as patiently as you can, and perhaps you will be as sorry for Rosanna Spearman as I was when I found out the truth." It just dangles that little bit of bait to read on, and it is so satisfying. It's also really fun when the narrators comment on the fact that Franklin Blake has asked them to write the thing. So Betteridge like goes off on these digressions, and then he's like, "That's not relevant. Mr. Blake will want me to get back on track." And when Miss Clack is like, "I don't feel like I've earned my check if I don't start talking about this thing," I just feel like the format of it all is really neat. The final thing I want to touch on a little bit, which isn't me gushing about the book, is the notion of ownership. Immediately upon the stone being lost, the police are called in, and it's like, we must get to the bottom of this mystery and charge the thief. It's really named as a theft until the good sergeant comes along and is like, no, it's just lost right now. Everyone feels a right to reclaim it, and Rachel, although she'd only been given this gift a matter of hours ago, feels such possession over it and goes into such hysterics when it's missing. She feels like it's her right to have it, and everyone else kind of agrees, but that's crazy when it was stolen in the first place. And you're meant to think of the Indians stealing it back as being incorrect, and that we have this kind of rights of ownership thing. I feel like when the book was written and there was a lot of kind of colonization of India and notions of like British ownership of everything, that it would have been kind of very common for everyone to assume that it was the right for the English side of this argument to keep it, because that was what was happening all around them at the time. But I think if we look at it from a modern perspective, hell yeah, they should have it back. He literally took it through murder in the first place. I do not agree with goblin rights of ownership, although I do sympathise, but I think if you have paid for something, then it should be yours forever. I think it's kind of ironic and quite sweet that this whole novel gets in such a huff about something that really they have no claim on in the first place. Mr. Blake prophesies that this might just be a trick by his malevolent uncle to bring down this kind of like curse upon the family, that they'll always be kind of hunted by these Indians in order to get the stone back. Without it even being stolen by the Indians, it still just wreaks absolute havoc. I'm kind of on the side that they deserve it, because they should have never laid claim on it in the first place. This has been my video on The Moonstone by Wilkie Collins, the first classic I really loved in quite a while. It was so great. I hope you pick it up sometime or listen to the audiobook. It's so much fun. And I'll see you for another video soon.